We live?
Looks like it.
Yeah, I'm not alive. That is for damn sure, Nicholas. Yeah, so here we go. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go.
Wow.
I'm not going to do the normal intro because this is a special show. Welcome, Nicholas.
Oh man, I gotta say I am impressed. Not only that you're powering through this illness that you're dealing with right now, but the fact that you're able to sing while you're not feeling all that well. I can't even sing when I'm feeling good like I am right now. So I'm very impressed, Joseph.
I think I just used everything I had and I might not be able to continue the show, but welcome back.
Motherfucker.
Welcome back to another issue of TLDR. It is Christmas, it is holiday season, I should say.
Mm,
And we've done this now. This is the second year in a row we've done this. We are doing we always try to do a service to the people, Nicholas, but this
yeah.
is a very special service, especially for those really, and I mean really last minute shoppers. But if you need some stocking stuffers, boy, are we going to give you just the right gift for the person, that special person in your life. And I love this. I love this.
Yeah.
This episode that we're doing, Nicholas.
Yeah, and look, we're doing it last minute. Obviously, normally we would like to do it a little bit farther in advance, but we do know that, look, especially if you're celebrating Christmas, you're gonna need some help. Personally, look, love my parents. Obviously, we did our our family Christmas because I'm going to Lawrence, see Lawrence family for Christmas. We already did our holiday thing, the six of us, and my parents decided to get me comics and decided to get my brother comics. My brother doesn't really read comics anymore, so not really working for him. I'm sure he really appreciated him regardless, the gesture at least. For me, again, appreciate the gesture, but my parents are getting me what is it, the
TMNT.
Murphy verse Red Hood. So like again, like not too far off, because they know I love Red Hood, so I appreciate it. My dad knows that, but at the same time, like we're trying to help those of you out who maybe need other ideas. And when it's like, okay, like I know they like stuff, but I don't know exactly where to go. What's the best route here? That's what the intent is with this. And a quick reminder too for everybody: if you are new to the show, catching us on Doc's Twitch, on Twitter, on the YouTube page, wherever you're listening to us or watching us right now, make sure you go subscribe to the show on our audio channel. We have our Friar side chats. Those are our special interviews that we do with all creators throughout the industry. It's the only place that you're going to find those. We do not stream those conversations. They're only available on audio. So that's Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Geeks Worldwide Radio, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you can, leave a 5-star rating and review. It really helps the show out a ton. If you leave any other kind of review, Dr. Joe's going to hunt you down. He knows how to crack backs, and I'm sure in the negative way too. So just be mindful. He'll go full bane on you. But did you have anything to add, Joe, before we get to catching up?
I just want to know if you broke your parents' hearts by telling them you didn't like the book that you've already read it.
No, you know what? I will say one year my dad got me Red Hood New 52 when I already had it. And I was like, Dad, like I told you, I actually had specifically said to him, like, don't buy me comics because like I know you're not going to know what's going on right now. And I probably should have just told him like what I want. But I don't know. It's, you run into those things as you become an adult, right? Like where it's like I buy the things that I want to have.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's tough. So I now I'm just like I like Sean Murphy stuff. I like Red Hood. I really appreciate the effort, and I don't know if I had one of the issues because we get the review copies, so sometimes we don't necessarily buy the stuff.
There's only 2 issues, I think, right?
Yes, yeah. So I do appreciate it. One quick thing before we get to catching up that I want to touch on too. I almost forgot about this. All the news that's going on with Aftershock is like Joe and I did not look, we pay attention to the news and everything like that and try and touch on some of the bigger stuff, things we care about. I had no idea about any of this stuff. And of course, we've had Cullen Bunn on the show a ton, and there are other actually John Lee's, is part of the is getting screwed over in this deal too. We've seen all the names, Hayden Sherman, like it looks like there's obviously a lot of stuff going on with Aftershock right now, a lot of negative stuff. And as much as we love the books that they put out, I care more about the creators in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
We always talk about the creators and seeing what they're going through. Not only the fact that they're not getting the money that they're owed, which is terrible, but then on top of that, people are sharing like the court case, and now people's addresses are out there. Look, if you haven't seen it already, just don't, and you stumble upon it, just try not to share it, like the court documents, because it's not ideal for the creators to have their personal information out there. Go to, like, different websites have covered it. I know Popverse was one place that I looked at for all this information, where I see all the names. If you're wondering who ended up, who's in a tight spot in this situation, all the creators. But look, I really hope that we continue to get the stories that they had planned there that had already begun. Like Chicken Devils is the one that I think of first, which Hayden Sherman is the artist on that one. I haven't talked about Chicken Devil on here. I'd like to talk about that more, because we have that second volume that they're in the middle of. But until that kind of gets resolved, I'm not going to go, and we're not going to go and promote that, just because, if you can't get it, and if the creators aren't getting their due, then what are we doing?
Yeah, it was wild when I saw this, because like I didn't. This is not, unfortunately, this is not an uncommon thing with small publishers, right?
Sure.
And Aftershock is not. It's not Image. It's not
Nope.
even Boom or AW, right? But they still have a fairly decent catalog.
Yeah, they do.
And you don't really. I didn't expect it from them, but then I wasn't surprised by it either, because it feels like the last month or two, we've hardly had any books by Aftershock come out talking about what's new.
Mhm.
And so now it makes a little bit of sense. And then, like, people sharing, yeah, like you said, people share that information. That was pretty stupid, but
Yeah.
it stinks. Aftershock is definitely, I think, an acquired taste, publisher wise. But I've enjoyed the stuff that they've put out over the last several years. So I hate to see it. I hate to see it for the creators, the artists, the writers.
Yeah.
But I hate to see it for them as a studio,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, we just want to read good shit.
I hope they figure it out. I really do, and I hope the creators get their due, because there are quite a few books that I want to talk about on here from them, and they do put out like some really good horror stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a really unfortunate situation. But again, like when you see that kind of stuff, like, and then I see people talking about other like publishers where it's like, oh, now it's happening to Aftershock, and then it's going to happen elsewhere. Who wants that? I don't understand what anybody would want that to happen. Like, I want Aftershock to succeed, and I want the creators to get their due. Like,
Yeah.
it's just it's so a terrible. We're just seeing terrible news across the board at the end of the year, Joe. Whether it's in this or other parts of our lives, but we're doing okay, and we want to help the people out and help them have a great holiday season. So let's get to catching up real quick. For me, I'll go through it real quickly. I have caught up on Sacrament to the point that I've already read the finale. Now, obviously, not going to talk about it right now. We'll talk about it in a little more detail after Christmas, but really good series. We've talked about that quite a bit. Wolverine, all caught up on that. I was a couple issues behind. Obviously, issue 28 out this week. Really like that too. I'll touch on that later, but what have you been catching up on?
I caught up on Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. I've read a few arcs of this now. This is my favorite one so far. It's been tremendous.
Huh.
Really good. And then Scorched issues 8 through 12. I didn't realize I was that far behind on the Scorched, but caught up. I still have to read this week's issue, but I wanted to catch up on that before I was able to read that one. So again, enjoying it. Wild change of change of pace with that
Yeah.
series.
That's for damn sure. Yeah, and I love some of the covers. Like all the Spawn covers, generally speaking, like they don't disappoint. But we've been getting some really kick-ass Scorched covers this week too. Kevin Keane did one, and I love his Spawn stuff in general. Whenever he does a cover,
I love all the Spawn covers for all the other books as well. Right?
Huh.
Buying, if I see a fucking Spawn variant at the store, I'm buying it, whether I've already read the book or not. You know what I mean? I'm just fucking grabbing it. It's absolutely fantastic.
Some crazy gunslinger stuff. I mean, King Spawn, we praise that book a ton. We don't talk about the covers at all, but there are so like the awesome shit over there too. But let's get to what's new and not dilly dally any further. Marvel, Joe, as you do, take us away.
All right, baby. We've got X-Men Annual #1. As you mentioned, Wolverine issue 28, Strange issue 9, Black Panther issue 12, Avengers Forever issue 12, Mary Jane and the Black Cat #1. This will be bought solely for the covers, I have a feeling. Gold Goblin issue 2, Alien issue 4, Spider-Man and the Lost Hunt issue 2. Speaking of Spider-Man, the trailer for Across the Spider-Verse, I should say, looks tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Web, Miss Marvel issue 1, Sabretooth and the Exiles issue 2, Namor Conquered Shores issue 3, and Wakanda issue 3.
And the one quick thing I do want to say on Wolverine too, I mentioned it a while back that I would love to see that whole like auction culture that Wolverine Benjamin Percy had delved into a little while back with Wolverine. I would have loved to see him go back into that. And we've seen that across the last few issues and everything that's going on right now with Wolverine and with Beast. It's very much like, as someone who's not reading the X-Force stuff, very much like what the fuck is going on. And it's been really good. I absolutely love the Wolverine series that Benjamin Percy's been writing. Obviously, various artists across the series. Might touch on it a little bit later in the gift guide, but we'll save that for the conversation later. Let's go to DC. So we got the Flash 789, Dark Crisis, final issue of that, issue 7, Batman Superman World's Finest, issue 10, Batman versus Robin, issue 4, Catwoman 50, Batman Urban Legends 22, Deceased War of the Undead Gods 5, Stargirl The Lost Children, issue 2, Titans United Blood Pact, issue 4, Harley Quinn, the animated series, Legion of Bats,
Nailed
issue
it.
3, GCPD, The Blue Wall, issue 3, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You, 119, and then DC versus Vampires All Out War, issue 6, final issue of that one. Like at first, that spinoff series I wasn't like crazy in love with, but I went back and revisited it before I did before I talked about the mainline series on the show, the mainline event, I should say, and really enjoyed it. Thought they did some awesome stuff with Deathstroke and a few other characters in the mix. Really, I just can't wait for the finale of the mainline series. And then Joe, a book that's very important to both of us was in the conversation on #Dork for comic book of the year, Nightwing 99. What'd you think?
Man, so good. So freaking good. I love that the villain that we have here, Heartless, we don't get a ton of them, right? Or a ton of them, I should say. It just you get panels here and there and what it's setting up, but what happened in this issue in particular, this is a weird thing, by the way. We can actually go into detail about most of these books because they've all come out by now. But this idea of Tony Zuko, and then everything that happens there, so good, and the little thing that Tom Taylor created, revolving around that, it was so excellent, and I just love where this is going. Now, this is a big issue because it's leading into Nightwing 100, which should be absolutely tremendous. So if you haven't been reading Nightwing, you need to go back. You can start it from the beginning of Tom Taylor's run. If you haven't read anything prior to that, don't worry about it, because I didn't, and it's become one of my favorite books of the year.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, and we'll be doing our annual coming up, and I'm sure this is going to pop up in the course of the conversation. One thing that I do want to hit on, because you talked about the plotting and everything, and I agree with you by and large on that. Bruno Redondo, like he go ahead.
That fucking splash page that he did, which was sort of like a mini version of that one panelist issue they did.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Was that 86 or 87? I can't remember, but either way, they're like, when he has not been on the series, look, they have brought in some really talented artists. They've brought in artists who have a similar style too, and they've done a really good job filling in for Redondo. But to me, like, this is the guy. Like, anytime I'm seeing a Nightwing book, like I'm going in and like I'm not just expecting Tom Taylor writing it. I need Redondo writing it too. To me, there is such a huge difference, and I don't know if Geraldo Borges is the colorist for every issue that Redondo is the artist. But to me, it's not just the line art that I look at it and think this fits Nightwing so well. The colors also always resonate really well with the line art and with the tone of the story. So the other artists have been really good, but to me, like, Redondo's like the person, like he is the right artist for Nightwing, just as much as Tom Taylor is the right writer for the series.
It's a perfect duo for sure. And I love how they've sort of refined his suit. And again, you talk about the coloring, that blue against the black, and just how it pops. It's perfect. This issue pops. And when you guys when you read this book, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's a splash. It's just 2 pages and it's panelless. It's like a microcosm of that one issue did, and it's perfect because you're just watching it. It's telling a story. Through the pictures, and you're just kind of going through, and you go up. And holy shit! The time it must have taken him to draw that, I can't imagine how difficult that was.
Yeah, and I will say too, just a little thing to tie it back to the book that I was talking about originally with DC versus vampires. If you really like Nightwing, I think that the Nightwing series, not just Nightwing in general, the Nightwing series, you really should consider picking up DC versus vampires. Just gonna leave it at that. And let's move over to Image. Obviously, a big week, Joe, but take us away.
All right, so we have Gunslinger Spawn 15, The Scorched 13. What's the furthest place from here? Issue 9. Junkyard Joe, issue 3. I Hate Fairyland, issue 2. Hatome, issue 3. Department of Truth Wild Fictions, issue 1. I bought this issue because there was a fucking kick-ass Spawn cover drawn by Martin Simmons. Voyages, issue 2. And then we have a couple of books, surprise, surprise, from Image that we want to talk about. Nicholas, where do you want to start?
Oh man, well, okay, so we're gonna have the conversation about comic book of the year on our annual. I know Rich Keefe decided that Vanish is the hashtag dork comic book of the year. Issue 4 of that is out this week, and I can't say that I blame him for picking that one. I think I can understand why anybody. Okay, I'll tell you this, Joe. I think I've mentioned to you that Lauren is reading this. She is reading Vanish monthly like that. She doesn't do that. Like I give her, she's reading some collected stuff. She's actually reading Animal Castle right now and loving that. Obviously 2 very different books, but Vanish is fucking outstanding. And whether you love Donny Cates' writing or Ryan Stegman's art, whatever it is, I mean, they're like, you talk about perfect tandems. They just do an outstanding job together. And for me, like the what stands out, what's going to stick with me from this issue is how grotesque the violence is in issue 4. I cannot believe, like, I shouldn't say that. But with this, like, kind of, we talked to Ryan Stegman a while back. For those who didn't check out that conversation, make sure you do. Talked a lot about Vanish. And there's obviously like a little bit of the boys in this series. So it shouldn't be that surprising, some of the violence we get here. But man, it is intense in this issue. You have certain expectations about people who are going to be involved, and then things just change, and no one is fucking safe when Donny Cates is writing. And if they're not safe when Donny Cates is writing, that means that Ryan Stegman is going to fuck them up. And oh my God, it was so good.
Donny Cates isn't even safe when Donny Cates is writing.
That is true.
Right?
Oh my God, great point.
But I mean, this is Stegman's art. We've gone over, how great it is, but this issue in particular, I just, like, you nailed it. Like, it's vicious. The art in here is absolutely vicious. Cates doesn't pull any punches with the writing, and neither does Stegman with the art. And there was some page. Okay. He's going to some places. He's digging in some dark places, to pull out this imagery. And it's been a fantastic series so far. Only 4 issues in, and it's already being considered for book of the year. I mean, that says something.
Yeah, absolutely. And they said 8 issues rather, for the original planning, but then there's going to be spin-offs. I mean, they can go so much farther.
Yeah.
With this, yeah. I can't wait for more of it. There is another book that I want to dig into, Joe, but why don't you take us through this one that you're reading that I'm sure you're going to talk about on the show at some point down the
line? Deadliest Bouquet. So I've mentioned this a few times. This is definitely a TLDR worthy book. Yes. What was great about this series is, I mean, I basically decided to read it because one of the characters' names is Violet. Mm-hmm. And that's my daughter's name. And but it had a really cool premise, and it's been a really good series, and it was going in a very specific direction, and then the way it ends and wraps up and everything, I didn't see coming. Maybe I should have. I don't know. This is going to be a great book for a reread to see if there were breadcrumbs left along the way, that when I read it all back to back without having that month in between, that maybe I'll pick up and see. But this was it was an excellent series. I enjoyed it. I can't wait to talk about it. And Yeah, yeah, excellent series.
Awesome. Real quick aside, your background right now, is that Klaus?
It's Klaus, baby.
Yeah, yeah, nice. I have that somewhere. So I haven't read that one. I've been meaning to read that one. Maybe now's the time. I actually got a day off tomorrow, so
It's
maybe I'll.
Christmas time, so I had to put something Christmassy up there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, of course.
Grant Morrison and Dan Moore. How could you not read that book already, Nicholas?
That is a great point. I actually forgot that was the creative team on that, but I do remember seeing it like before our show started, because Klaus was what, 2017 book, I think, or 2018, maybe even earlier than that. But I remember seeing the art for that before I knew who Dan Mora was. It was like, this looks fucking badass. Like, and it's Santa Claus. Like, wow. Okay. I'm very interested. But anyways, the one other Image book that we want to talk about, I mean, God, we could talk about all of them from this week. They all kicked ass. But for me, Joe, we need to talk about Rogue Sun as well, because so we had the Confundus Charm issue that really fucked you up. That was the 7th issue, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
and now we're back into the main story of what's going on with Rogue Sun, with Dylan. And there are a couple things that go on from a plotting standpoint that I find really interesting. Once again, you have his siblings that they're trying, or his half siblings, however you want to put it, who are trying to push buttons in the background and try and manipulate the situation. And what's so good, like, when it comes to Ryan Parrott in his writing, he does such a good job of just planting a seed and knowing exactly when to stop with that,
Mm.
and just like leave it there and then start moving on to other stuff that's also very interesting. But that other thing he'll start digging into over the course of an arc or over the course of a couple other arcs. And it's just to see him. I saw him do it a ton with Power Rangers, and obviously, and I'm very excited for his. We're getting the second run of what is it, TMNT Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which is Ryan Parrott. And speaking of Dan Mora, I don't know how Dan Mora does it. Like, I'd love to have him on the show someday just to ask, like, what's your sleep schedule like? Because how the fuck does he do all this? But yeah, so that the seed that's planted there, and then of course we have all the other action and how Dylan's being pushed to the brink at the end of the issue, and now he's kind of in a tight spot too. I just think that Parrott does a great job of, like I said, planting the seed. But in this situation now, he's kind of painted his main character in a corner while he's got other pressures that he has no idea about. I mean, Ryan, we haven't even touched on writer of the year, but he's in that. He's always in that conversation for me. And I think that as I'm talking about Rogue Sun more and more, where it's also in the conversation for book of the year. I mean, I don't know about you, Joe, but he's right there for me.
Yeah, I mean, we love this series, and we recommend it to everybody. And what I love about it, as you mentioned with the half siblings there, is we still don't know their end game. We're 9 issues in,
Yeah,
and there's still a giant gray area with them. Right? We don't know if their intentions are good or if their intentions are something more sinister or more malicious. And so it makes for really good storytelling, because Dylan is a prick, right?
yep.
And so you're still not generally rooting. I mean, I'm rooting for him because I want to see that character growth. I want to see if as a character he's able to sort of take it to that next level. Sort of like I'm waiting for Jason Tatum to fucking take it to the next level. Hashtag sports talk, because once he realizes that it's about winning, that they'll be unstoppable. Right. And it's the same thing
Rogue
with,
Sun
like,
or the Celtics? I'm
yeah,
confused now.
Celtics. But I was gonna say the same thing with Dylan. Like, once he realizes his potential, I think he will be every bit as good as his dad was, or even better. And so, like, that's what's great about the storytelling here, is that this thing's wobbling and it can really go either way, and whatever direction it goes, and it's going to be excellent.
I mean, we're not even touching on the ending too. Like, which
Right.
sets up for it sets up for what the fuck? Like, what? I have no
Mm-hmm.
clue. No, absolutely zero clue how things are going to go next. Very awesome series.
Yes.
And again, Abel was not on this issue. Who also, we talk about artist of the year conversation. Awesome stuff throughout the year from him. Marco Reyna, though, did a great job. Like, there's very clearly a different aesthetic. And again, I hate that I'm doing this, but I'm not sure if Natalia Marquez was the colorist for all the other issues. I don't believe so, just because this has a much brighter feel to it. But still, it very much fits the vibe of the whole story, despite it having quite a different aesthetic. So great job from them. And look, as much as I want Abel on every issue, because I love it, because again, he's got that Sean Murphy kind of art style. I'd like to I like this creative this art team too. I think they could do a good job, taking the reins going forward. But anyways, let's move over to Boom. Let's see. So we got Berserker, Joe's favorite series, issue 11. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, issue 103. Loving what Melissa's doing with this series. Friend of the show, Melissa Flores, doing some great stuff with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. All new Firefly, big damn finale, issue 1. The Vampire Slayer, issue 9. Eve, Children of the Moon, issue 3. And then a couple books that you're talking about, Joe. Stuff of Nightmares, issue 4, the finale for that. Yeah. And then
that was I'll take it from here. Don't do you just
Oh wow, okay.
Cool. So Stuff with Nightmares, R.L. Stine. Again, this is another surprising book because I thought it was going to be more childish, and it was very twisted and had a great ending. An ending that was predictable but still fun nonetheless. And it has this really fun sort of there's a character that's sort of like this crypt keeper kind of character. So it was fun. I enjoyed the series very much. And then the book from Boom this week was Something Is Killing the Children, issue 27. I mean,
never heard of it, huh?
Continues to just be, the thing I look forward to reading the most, outside of it's Nightwing, and it's Daredevil. Those are the top 3 that really like. They're just so good, and so like and it's because of the main character, Erica Slaughter. Like, she is just such a great character, and this is a little bit of a this issue is a little bit of a tells a lot of backstory about one of the characters in this particular arc. That was very fascinating, and what it's setting up. I mean, he has introduced a villain. James Tynion is introduced a villain in this arc that is, it's supposed to be the monsters, right? The thing that's killing the fucking children is supposed to be the fucking villain, and it's not. It is this member of the Order of St. George, the very same order that Erica had belonged. It's just, it is one of the most despicable evil characters I've read in recently, and it's so good. Like, this book just continues to get better and better and better.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously we've seen what stemmed out of this original series too.
Yeah,
I've read the first arc. I gotta keep reading more.
It was only supposed to be a 6-issue series. Here
crazy.
we are.
It's crazy. I mean, when you look at Boom too, I mean, obviously they've had a ton of great stuff, but I mean, God, you look at Something That's Killing the Children and Once and Future. Those are probably their 2 best books ever, right?
Yeah. I think those are the 2 books that really catapulted. I mean, they're what catapulted Boom to me to such elite status. But I think prior to these 2 books coming out, Boom was a lot of Power Rangers stuff, and I think it was more geared towards children, if I'm not mistaken. I gotta look into that.
Yeah, they do have
that was my recollection of it. But I mean, what they've become over the past 4 years, it's been tremendous.
You know what? I was looking into, I've been just year-end stuff. Everybody's doing different things. And I was looking into some other year-end stuff, and I saw someone mention there's that other Boom imprint that's like kind of more adult, if I'm not mistaken.
Archaea?
Yeah, right? Which you have. I know you have a book that you were looking at from that. And there's another, there was another series that I
might be a book from that imprint on our list.
Yeah,
coming up.
But there's another one from that one too, from that imprint that I heard about from this year that maybe I'll steal it on you since you don't know about it for on the show later on.
I'm probably reading it. I just can't remember the title.
Okay, well, I can't either. But anyways, from Dark Horse this week, did you read The Witcher: The Ballad of the Two Wolves?
I damn right, son.
Oh
Oh
God,
God,
dude.
it makes me so pissed that fucking
Uh,
Henry Cavill's gotten dicked around. He's no longer going to be Geralt because he is hashtag my Geralt. And I was reading today they're doing some proper send off for him for this end of season 3. I'll tell you what, it's gonna be the proper send off for me too, because that's probably the last season of The Witcher I'll watch.
so when we talk about Christmas gifts, that my brother got me my
Oh,
second
that's dope.
Geralt. Yeah, pretty fucking
Oh,
awesome.
that's dope. But this
Yeah.
this this was such a great issue. I mean, I love even the Witcher's the last Witcher series that came out. We
Mhm.
liked it, but the art, I remember the art
The
wasn't.
story was great, and again, the writer, at least across the last three, I don't know if it's been more, but Bartos Sizebor. Again, sorry for
Yeah,
mispronouncing the
yeah,
name, but his writing has been great.
yeah. The art in the last art or the last little, the last arc wasn't our favorite, but this
Right.
series, this arc, this new arc, the art's tremendous. The story was great. I love where it's going to go. The ballad of the two wolves. They I love how they sort of show you why it's called that, within this first issue. It was fantastic. Any Witcher fan should be reading these comics. um
Yep.
no exception, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And there may be one that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on in here. But you mix in the bard and everything too,
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because we haven't really gotten a lot of dandelion in the comics, and or dandelion as
no,
the
it's
audiobooks sometimes
dandelion.
say.
Yeah,
Right,
fucking
yeah.
fuck out of here.
I don't know why, but he was great. He was great. He was a nice little addition to
He's
the
awesome.
series. Yeah.
He's awesome. I absolutely have the Witcher song from the show. Like the Toss a Coin, Dear Witcher. I have that on
Yeah.
my phone. I definitely listen to that. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like the art for this series too. So the artist on this one, excuse me, is Miko Mont Mon Montlo and Miki. Oh, I'm sorry, Miki Montolo, and that's the artist and colorist on this series too. So love the aesthetic. Think it very much fits The Witcher. I have we've talked about before about where we don't like seeing artist changes throughout ongoing series. With The Witcher, I do get it because it's different arcs, very like separate stories. With The Witcher, it's set up in such a way where your Geralt's like previous story can have nothing to do with the one before. Although I will say Bartos does kind of allude back to some of the previous stories that he's written. I did appreciate that in the dialogue. I don't know if it was Dandelion or if it was Geralt that said that stuff. But
Yeah, he
anyways,
used said dandelion.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's the way it apparently is supposed to be, right? Anyways, but I like the choice for the artist here. I think it very much fits the Witcher aesthetic and all this. So great call by Dark Horse on that one. Take us through these next few that we got, Joe, before we get to the actual gift guide.
All right, so from IDW, we have TMNT Saturday Morning Adventures issue 3. That's on
Mm,
Swaggins' pull list.
that's right.
We have Sonic Scrapnik Island issue 3, True Cult issue 5, Dead Seas issue 1.
I want to check that one out. Actually, I meant to look at that. Yeah, forgot about it.
From Source Point Press, we have Good Boy Prodigal Son issue 2,
Mm,
Mysterium issue 2, Curse of Cleaver Country issue 1, Heaven's Rejects issue 4, and The Argus issue 3. And then from Titan, a friend
mm.
of the show, Charles Ardai, we have Gun Hunting Blood for Blood issue 4. Man, such a good arc, such a good ending. Sets up for another arc. So I mean, we got to get it. There's no doubt in my mind that we're not going to get it. So if you haven't been reading Gun Honey, definitely go out. Find the first volume, read it. This second volume has been every bit as good.
Yeah,
Every bit as
actually,
good.
so as we kind of transition into the actual gift guide, we don't have Titan on here for our books, but I know you talked about Peepland from Krista Faust when we
Yes.
had her
Yep.
on the show a while back. That's a great book to pick up, and then I couldn't agree with you more. Gun Honey is just like is such an easy series to binge. That first one, and the first trade is
Well,
out.
yeah, and they're only 4 issues long each arc. So I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
So as we begin our gift guide, again, this is last minute. Obviously, so we actually changed things up as we planned this out. Last year, we kind of got cute. We had a bunch of different categories that we decided to make up. This year, we just want to do it by publisher, keep it nice and easy for you guys. No, I mean, look, there are some of the publishers too. We could talk about a lot of books, but we're just going to keep it, succinct, minimum 2, maximum 4 for recommendations. If you've listened to last year's guide, or if you haven't already, you can go check that one out. We don't need to go through them, Joe, but those recommendations that we had from last year, as much as we're not going to talk about them here, we still feel the same way. That does not change. We're just trying to give you guys more options in case you bought them last year or something to that degree. So want to start with Marvel?
Yeah. So
Okay.
what we did here is that we went through, the major publishers that we talk about the most, and I picked 2 books from each publisher, and Nick picked 2. So we're going to go through here, and do we want to read these in any particular order? Do we want to?
No,
Who
we'll
do you
just
want to
do it
say
like
for laugh?
we do. Let's just do it in the order that we have them, and you go first, and I go
Okay.
like we
All right.
normally
So
do.
we're gonna start with Marvel here, because this is the top dog here. So 2 of the books that I picked, and so one of them is a continuation from what I had last year's holiday guide, and
Mm,
because the series is that good, we're in a new phase of it now. But Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky with art by Marco Cicchetto, and we're in the first Daredevil run went 30 something issues. We had the Devil's Reign event, and now we're in the second sort of phase of Daredevil. And this so far has been Daredevil, Elektra, and Punisher
good
have
job.
been, and it's been excellent, excellent storytelling. I mean, it's just classic, Zdarsky putting on a clinic here when it comes to this character, because I think he understands this character better, almost better than anyone that's written him. It's that good.
Yeah, I mean, there've been a lot of. I remember a friend of the show, Task, Corey Pruitt, saying how like Daredevil's one of the maybe the most well written character consistently over the years. But
Yeah.
I agree. Like whoever is going to take over Daredevil next,
God bless him.
because when we had Chip on, was it last time or maybe it was the first time that we had him on? He said like how didn't he say something to the degree, Joe? Like he's helping figure out who's going to write Daredevil next. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, something like that. Like there's
Yeah.
going to be a
Good luck.
transition when he's done. Yeah, but good luck indeed. And then the other book is Punisher. This
Yeah.
was going into this. I've read some Jason Aaron books before. I like him as a writer. But Punisher is not a character that I typically read a lot, and so I didn't know how this was going to go. And so far, it is, again, talk about a writer understanding the character and where he's gone with Punisher and where the story has gone in general, and then how Punisher and Daredevil are sort of, kissing, as Chip, put
Yeah.
it so
Mm.
wonderfully. It's been excellent. Like, these are 2 books. If you're Marvel fans, and you're not necessarily, you know, like, if you're not necessarily into like the X-Men or the Avengers or anything like that, you want something a little grittier, you want something a little, these are the 2 titles that are perfect for that. I mean, they're just excellent. It's next level writing, it's next level, stories, plots that are going on, and the art, right? Cicchetto's art and Paul as Aceda's art on Punisher. It's just been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, the art team on Punisher has been wild because they have different writer for the artist for the flashbacks as
Right,
well. It has
right,
been
right.
so good. I couldn't agree with you more on these 2 recommendations, Joe. I mean, it's like obviously Chip and Marco, they do an outstanding job with Daredevil. Joe's talked about it plenty on this show, not just today. And with the Punisher, man, like we gotta check the dates on that one because that's probably in the conversation for comic of the year too. And I know that one got a ton of blowback because it's like, oh, they changed the logo on the character and everything. Look, like whatever for the reason, obviously the reasons they did it are external outside of Marvel. It's fit perfectly in the course of the story. They've made it where it makes perfect sense. And I agree with you completely too when you say if you don't like, you don't care about the Avengers, you don't want to, you're not as crazy interested in the larger Marvel stuff. Daredevil and Punisher always seem like they can kind of be doing their own thing
Mhm.
outside of Marvel, where it fits perfectly. And that is very much the case here, as much as the stakes are very high. And if you liked the shows, if you know someone who liked the shows, these are, while it's different stuff from what went on with the Netflix shows, it very much fits the vibe of those two. And I think people who like those shows and are interested in getting into the comics, these are great places to get started.
And these are probably as close to indie style books from Marvel as you're going to get.
Mm.
Right? They're not necessarily cookie cutter. They don't have to live within a particular sandbox. We've heard about, when Snyder was on talking about Batman, and when some of these other, guests that we've had on, are writing these legacy characters. They're like, we've got to stay, like Chip was saying with Spider-Man, like we've got to stay within certain confines. These characters can't do this, they can't do that. But it feels like with Daredevil and Punisher, they're allowed some more freedom, and
Mhm.
they're gritty books, and I absolutely love them.
You just brought up Chip and Scott in the same breath, and it reminded me how like Chip's writing Batman now, and
Yeah,
Scott basically told him like that's like the number one book, like that's the one that like funds everything over at DC.
yeah,
Like basically told Chip that right when he started, and it's like, well, fuck,
yeah,
thanks.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
We haven't talked to Scott in a while, actually. I know he's been like doing a lot more. Like we've already talked to him about his newer stuff over with Comixology and Dark Horse, but it's funny how we've had him on more than anybody still, I think, on the show. But it's been a minute. Um, as for me, for my recommendations, so talk about Daredevil, Punisher. I think the other two titles that we talk about most are also from a friend of the show, Benjamin Percy. That's Wolverine and Ghost Rider. And with Ghost Rider, we've seen different artists with Benjamin Percy on that one, but Corey Smith is the main artist throughout the first arc. With Wolverine, Adam Kubert has been on the series primarily, but we've seen different artists. Most recently, we've seen a different artist, very different aesthetic, but still the story has been compelling throughout all of it. And for Wolverine, you talk about playing in a sandbox. Obviously, we're dealing with Krakoa stuff with X-Men, but I feel like as long as you know what's going on, as long as you have an understanding of what Krakoa is, you're able to really enjoy the Wolverine series still because Benjamin Percy gets the character so well. And
Mm,
as I mentioned earlier in catching up, where there was a certain story or certain like potential story that was alluded to early on in Benjamin Percy's Wolverine run, he's kind of come back to that a little bit and taken it in a very interesting direction. So if you like Wolverine, even if you haven't read, because obviously a lot of Wolverine stuff out there, as long as you know the character, understand what's going on with Krakoa in general, which you can figure out, even a new reader, it's really interesting. I highly recommend picking that one up. Just Benjamin Percy gets the character perfectly, and if you get Wolverine well, I feel like you're going to write a good story. Ghost Rider, again, Percy told us that he doesn't expect it to be a long run just because Ghost Rider never gets a long run. It's a shame because we talk about underrated titles. Like I feel like Ghost Rider is absolutely in that conversation. In how like this is I've talked about horror adjacent quite a bit, whether it's on TLDR or Change My Mind, and how like that's kind of my wheelhouse, whether we're talking about shows, movies, or comics, where it's like it's kind of scary, but it's not exactly scary. And as much as Ghost Rider can get pretty creepy with some of the imagery that we get throughout this, I feel very much like Ghost Rider, Benjamin Percy's run, is more horror adjacent, maybe delves into horror a little bit, but the character, such a cool look, such an interesting backdrop in what Benjamin Percy has done and in the artists that he's worked with in furthering that character and adding some other people to the mix that are new to the Marvel universe. It's a must read week to week. It's not going to be a long run just because, I mean, based on what Percy said, I think it deserves to be a long run. And for people who, as long as you like know who Ghost Rider is, you can read it. Like his like general backstory, you can read it and you can enjoy it. And that's all it takes.
yeah, I haven't read a ton of Ghost Rider. This is really the first title of Ghost Rider I've read,
Mm,
and it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, obviously, very familiar with the character, but in terms of like seeking out his books, reading them, it's just not been a character I've ever really been drawn to.
sure.
but this series has been. I mean, you talk about horror, Jason. This is pretty much a horror book. It's
Okay, that's
fantastic.
fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it gets pretty. The stuff with the back of his head gets pretty fucking nasty.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't call it horror, Jason. I'd
All
flat out
right,
just
fair.
call this is a Marvel horror book, and it is tremendous.
Maybe my bar's been raised a little bit for how scary some shit is because of the stuff that we read. But DC, as if I don't know what you're going to talk about for DC.
Yeah, one of these I think might surprise you, but Nightwing, written by Tom Taylor with art by Bruno Redondo, et al. Again, there's not much more I could say about this book, but in terms of like as a holiday gift for someone, like I said, go back. You gotta find issue 70, but the first volume of Tom Taylor's run of Nightwing. This is great for all level, really, of comic fans. And that's the wonderful thing about Nightwing is that I could tell my 12-year-old nephew to read it and not be worried that there's going to be something in there that is too adult for him or over its head. But at the same time, it's not childish either, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some adult themes in there. It's just flat out really great storytelling, superhero storytelling from a character that has been elevated because of Tom Taylor's writing. I mean, I've always enjoyed Nightwing. Nightwing's always been a great character, but he's been elevated just the same way that I think Zdarsky's elevated Daredevil. It's been that good of a series, and so this is a recommendation that you can give to your 12-year-old, son or daughter or niece or nephew, or you can give to your, hopefully your son who is in his 30s now, who reads comics but might not have read it yet, right?
Yeah.
This is just an excellent all around book that makes, I think, a great gift. And then this next
Before
book,
you go to your next one, I want to say for anybody new to the show that's like come across this us because it's a gift guide and giving you options. One thing that Joe has said on the show that I think just sums it up perfectly. You kind of alluded to it a little bit, but Joe has put Tom Taylor and Nightwing on the same level as Chip Zdarsky and Daredevil. And that is the first book that Daredevil's the first book that Joe talked about on here. That is his absolute favorite. I know all the indies that we talk about, but you absolutely love what Chip does with Daredevil. For him to put Nightwing and Tom Taylor on that same level, don't take that lightly.
Yeah, it's because they get the characters, and it's all about characters for me, and also good storytelling, which they both do. This next book, I've had some gripes with, but it's mostly because it's just taken forever, for it to come to to completion. But Nice House on the Lake, written by James Tynion, with beautiful, gorgeous art by Alvaro Martinez Bueno, and here we are. The book is still not done yet, but the first volume is out. And what I'll say is the first arc was great. And when you're able to binge read it and not have to wait 1 month or 6 months or whatever between issues.
Sure.
This is just, there's great character depth here. There's great storytelling. There's horror elements to it. There's sci-fi elements to it. There's a great mystery behind it all. I know, like I said, I've bitched about it because I want my money and I want it now, right? And it's the same issue we had with The Last Ronin. Like when there's such big gaps between issues, you kind of forget what happens prior, and then you can get a little confused, and it can really kind of take you out of what really is a great story. So this is a book I would recommend to someone who loves a little bit of horror, loves a little bit of sci-fi, loves a little bit of mystery, kind of dips its toes and all that while telling a really good story at the same time, and someone who really appreciates great art, like Nice House on the Lake. You can pick up the first volume now. I think the last issue comes out in the next couple weeks. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it all wraps up. But this really is a really, really solid book.
And again, like when you talk about indie stuff, we don't see that obviously at DC and Marvel. Obviously, DC had Vertigo years ago, and now they have DC Black Label, which this falls under. This is just this more so than the other three that we just talked about, or whatever from DC and Marvel. Like, no, you're not going to have any background on this. Like whoever you're giving this to. So it's just like a great gift because there's no worries about, you know,
Yeah.
knowing having previous knowledge about the title. As for me from DC, now look, there's a lot of good stuff, and obviously, I mean, when we were coming up with this, I wasn't going to touch on Nightwing because I know how much you love it. As much as I was reading Nightwing before, even through some of the bad times. Yeah, but the two that I want to touch on, I think, are pretty obvious ones: Dark Knights of Steel and DC versus Vampires. Now, DC versus Vampires is going to be wrapping up either later this month or early in 2023, but there is stuff that you can pick up. Same with Dark Knights of Steel. Dark Knights of Steel, Tom Taylor, who obviously Joe talked about just a second ago, and Yasmin Putri. Now, there has been another artist on the series, but she is the primary artist. DC versus Vampires, Matt Rosenberg and James Tynion are the writers, and then Otto Schmidt is the artist. Now, you talk about artists, two completely different aesthetics to their art. Otto Schmidt is much grittier. He get in sketchier. Yasmin Putri has like this beautiful, crazy finish in the colors that's been on the series too. Really complements her work. But both of these, I think any DC fan can really enjoy. DC versus Vampires because we're just seeing that world kind of crumble, and different characters who are who are basically turned heel because they're vampires throughout the course of it all. Really been enjoying that series. And again, can't wait for it to wrap up. Talked about it on the show a while back. Dark Knights of Steel. You and I have both been reading this from day one. I mean, Tom Taylor, when you give Tom Taylor that full reign with these characters or these legacy characters, it's like, okay, this is its own thing. You can do what you want, have fun. He's gonna fuck some people up. And he absolutely does that in Dark Knights of Steel. And it's only going to get freaking crazier throughout the course of it all. And we talk about like the deaths and everything like that, which are always very interesting when we're dealing with legacy characters. But the way he twists some of these characters too with their history in the course of this like I guess not non-canon world is very interesting too. Specifically thinking about what he does with Batman in the course of it all, Joe. So
Right.
Dark Knights of Steel, Dark Knights of Steel, I think, is collected in 3-issue trades. If
Yeah.
not, they maybe did a 6-issue one too. But there's definitely Dark Knights of Steel stuff that you can pick up out there. Same with DC versus Vampires. Obviously, we're keeping in mind, we're generally trying to give you guys trades that you can pick up for whoever you're getting a gift for. But there are some exceptions. Let's move over to Image.
Image. So, a book that I talked about recently, and Rich Keefe of the Dork podcast recently read and absolutely loved.
Yep.
That Texas Blood, written by Chris Condon with art by Jacob Phillips. And again, this is a great book. Like you mentioned earlier, like with the indie books, you don't really have to have previous knowledge. This is its own thing, and this is a Western mystery story that is so well written and so well drawn. The story is so compelling. You know, each arc, there's 3 volumes, with the 3rd volume coming out in a couple weeks, I believe. It's their self-contained stories. The first volume, is dealing. Oh shit, what's it dealing with?
Wow.
I'm sick, Nicholas. Give me a break. I'm jacked up on all sorts of fucking drugs. The
I can't
second,
believe you're right.
the second volume revolves around sort
dream.
of a kidnapping. The third volume revolves around a serial killer. But it's so good. The characters are so just so interesting, and especially with the main character there and all the shit that he's had to deal with. I can't recommend this book enough. To a general fan of any comics, but 2, if they're anything like me that like sort of gritty crime stories, that's what this is. And I mean, Jacob Phillips, like, we know his pedigree and his family's pedigree with those types of stories, but it's so well written. They read very quickly, and I always say that, as a high compliment, because you don't want to put it down.
Agreed.
So that Texas Blood, that's a comic that you get for someone who loves like mystery, loves gritty crime stories. It's perfect. And then the next book I picked out from Image, again, this is more of a horror type story. It is excellent. The art is gritty. It's called I Hate This Place, or the alternate title is fuck this place, which when I saw in the store, I always bought that, that variant of it. But I Hate This Place, written by Kyle Starks with art by Artem Toplin. And again, this is just a really great original sort of horror ghost type story that I think's got really great characters. The art, like I said, it's gritty, it gets violent, it gets gruesome. The first arc ends just perfectly. The first volume came out in November, so stores should have it. Again, this is another book you get for the horror fan in your life.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Both of them are obviously great recommendations, but I Hate This Place we've both been reading since it came out from Skybound, and it's some really good stuff.
Yeah.
As for me, look, with Image, there's so much good stuff. I mean, again, we talk about, you can pick out things for people that they don't have to have any background, because the series didn't exist until like this first issue. With some other stuff, it gets a little complicated, because you can have like Punisher 1, and it's like we've got a lot of Punisher stuff over the years. From Image, I mean, like Reckless, you bring up the Phillips family, the Reckless books, they are so good. We got a couple of those this year. They were outstanding. But for me, Rogue Sun is, when we're talking about collected editions, Vanish is not in this conversation because Vanish has just started, and there's no collected stuff out there. But you could go and get single issues of Vanish. There's 1 through 4 out there, that would be great if they're on the shelf still. Definitely an awesome one. But Rogue Sun for me is right there, just as good in terms of comic of the year. Ryan Parrott and Abel on that series. I love Abel's aesthetic. It's, again, Sean Murphy like, and we had talked about it, and then Ryan Parrott mentioned that to us, because I didn't want to say that out loud, Joe, to him, because it's like, oh, it's Ryan, Abel's his own artist. People have influences and stuff, but for Ryan to bring it up himself, it's like, okay, like we're on the same page. So I absolutely love Rogue Sun. If you like superhero stuff, or someone likes superhero stuff, but they want something different in like outside of Marvel and DC, dipping into the massive verse in general is a great idea. Personally, Rogue Sun would be the way that I would recommend anybody to go first. But the Dead Lucky has been awesome. Radiant Black has been great. Radiant Red was really fun too. You need to read Radiant Black to have read Radiant Red, though, and really appreciate that. And then the other one too, again, we talk about legacy stuff and getting confused. King Spawn. Obviously, Spawn is a legacy character. He's the longest running creator-owned comic. But Joe can tell you more than anybody. Joe, you don't have to have read a whole hell of a lot of Spawn to be able to read King Spawn and appreciate it. Because, Joe, you've read how many issues of Spawn before reading King Spawn? Like 5, right?
Yeah. It's the thing. It's like I read Spawn way back, and then didn't read it for 20 years or whatever, and then tried to read a bunch to kind of get caught up to where it was leading into King Spawn, and then I haven't gone back to Spawn since, to be honest with you.
Right, and you don't have to. And King Spawn it's the best like Spawn writing that we've ever gotten. And we've gotten, and Sean Lewis, obviously a friend of the show, he's been doing outstanding work with that. The Scorched has been a lot of fun too. But I think that the way he's been able to dig into Al, and then also what he's done with Terry in the course of King Spawn, it's just been great. And we know the first volume is out there for sure, and the cover of that is by Javier Fernandez, who has been the primary artist of the series. Spawn has been a title that has fostered a lot of impressive artists over the years. Jason Shawn Alexander, Greg Capullo, John Boy did some stuff, I believe, on Spawn as well. And it's just all of them have been, they have their own spot, and they bring more. Some bring more action, some bring more horror. Javier Fernandez is kind of a mix of the two, of action and horror, and I can't get enough of him on King Spawn.
He's up for Artist of the Year for me.
For sure. Me too.
And then, but that, I discount Brett Booth either for what he's been doing over in Gunslinger Spawn, right?
Gunslinger Spawn is another great one too. Don't know if there's a collected edition out there. I would imagine there is, because we're well into the second arc, maybe past the second arc now, if I'm not mistaken. But definitely, Gunslinger Spawn is another great one to pick up too. But when we talk about Spawn, King Spawn is the book, period, to read. But Brett Booth, I mean, Brett Booth to me, it's like Dan Mora and Brett Booth are probably like the two, like, you two can fucking draw any book, and then I'm very interested. Like, there are some other artists who are similar, but I just feel like those guys work for absolutely anything, because they are just so fucking cool. They're like, when you think about the cool 90s art that we used to get, they're the ones that took that and expanded it. Stegman is right there with those two as well. Those three.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all very epic artists when it like they have that sort of epic feel to their art when they're drawing their stuff. Whereas, other artists like whether De La Dera from Something Is Killing the Children or Francisco Francavilla, like their art, their styles are very like they're very specific and they're very geared towards what they're doing and what they're like the books they're drawing on. It's like, yeah, I see why you're drawing this particular book. Whereas like I feel like Mora, Stegman, whatever, like there's just this epicness that it's almost like that big Marvel kind of feel to it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Agreed. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, speaking of Werther Dell'Edera, let's move over to Boom. I'm pretty sure that one of his books you're talking about.
Yeah, so I mean, this is probably going to be on my gift guide every year going forward because Something Is Killing the Children. As I mentioned, this is one of my all-time Mount Rushmore books, written by James Tynion, with art by Werther Dell'Edera, and so this is horror. This is action. This is just tremendous storytelling. This is tremendous character work. Visually stunning. Like Something Is Killing the Children. Again, like this is something that everyone should be reading. It is. I absolutely love it, and I will recommend it to everyone until I'm blue in the face. Not necessarily for maybe young adult readers, but not that far off. Either. But there is some imagery in here, and they go, oh, baby, there's some viciousness to Dilladera's art.
If you want to be up for Uncle of the Year like Joe is right now, though, I'm giving him a run for his money. This is a series.
Oh, did you get your nephew Under the Red Hood as well?
I did not, but I got. He's a little too young for that. He's a little too young for that. I'll tell you what I got him in a minute. We'll get there.
So that's one, and then the other one, The Killer: Affairs of the State, by Matz and Luke Jacquemin, and this was a very compelling comic book. This is definitely not something for everyone. This is a lot of storytelling, but it is. I thought, considering there isn't a lot of action in it, it was very well paced. It's got that sort of conspiracy hitman kind of vibe to it. It's if this is a book I would recommend to someone who loves great storytelling and loves that sort of conspiracy slash political thriller, I should say, type story, because there's, it revolves around hitmen and carrying out jobs and, sort of the double lives that they lead. This is definitely more of, this is not one where it's going to be action panel by panel by panel. This is definitely more of sort of like last week we had our manga issue, and we talked about like, oh, this feels like more of a novel in comic book form. That's kind of what this feels like. It's more of like a short story in comic book form. So this is one, like I said, I would definitely recommend for someone who's into that sort of political thriller, conspiracy, hitmen, kind of story.
Are you gonna talk about this on the show soon?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna if you want to read it, you can.
Okay. Because I remember seeing cover art by John Boy on this at one point, and I was like, "Oh, this looks badass."
Yeah, give it a read. Give it a read, because like I said, like this is not something for everyone. So I don't know if I do an entire episode issue for this particular series, but it is excellent. That's not to say it's not excellent.
Right.
But I try and pick books that I think will appeal to a lot of people. But this is a book I would definitely recommend if there's someone that that likes more like that. It's like a short story in comic book form.
Okay. I'm into it. Because I've been waiting for you to talk about that one too on the show for a bit. As for me from Boom, so obviously a show that Joe talked, a book that Joe talked about on the show a long while back was Once and Future. We've talked about it ad nauseum on here. Kieran Gillen Dan Mora, when we talk about like creative teams that are just like, holy fuck, like how did this happen where these two came together? It's absolutely
And
brilliant.
having Gillen on the show to talk about the finale,
Oh,
it was such a great chat we had with him, and such a bittersweet ending too. Like this book is, again, this is one you recommend to everyone and anybody.
30 issues. But it's so not a lot. You get whoever you're getting the gifts for, you get them that first trade, guaranteed they're gonna thank you 10 times over for it, and they're gonna pick up the rest of the series because this thing is so damn good. It's absolute crack. And we've been highlighting the line artist throughout all this, but Tamara Bonvillain is the colorist on this series.
Oh,
Oh my god, the way that
perfection,
yes,
perfection.
Tamara and Dan are an amazing art team. Oh my god. So, and look, there could be more beyond Once and Future. Not necessarily important for people who are given the gift guide, but I really hope if we get more, it's going to still be Dan Mora and Tamara Bonvillain with Kieran Gillen. Obviously, Kieran's going to be writing it, but I really hope we get those two, the whole like the primary creative team. I think Ed Duke shares a letter or two, so that would be great. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. The other one is a book I've talked about on the show, Red Mother by Jeremy Hahn and Dan Lookert. You haven't given this one a look yet, right?
No, not yet. Nope.
Okay, and this is a horror book. This is freaky. So as we've all talked about different horror books throughout the course of the show, and that we don't just like the same kind of thing all the time. But I will say I've started to find that I really appreciate the books that have like that one character who, above all else, I would describe as eerie, who's just like somehow feels like they're kind of in the background and they just pop up on you out of fucking nowhere. And it's just like, oh, and like as I'm thinking about them,
Fucker came out of nowhere.
they give you the goddamn shiver down the spine. Like in the movie. I don't know how many horror movies you watch, but I feel like it's not a lot because they fuck with you. They fuck with me even more. Yeah. Like you have that character who just kind of pops in the background, like just quietly, like you're focused on somebody else, and then someone pops up in the background. It's like, nope, I'm all set. Get me the fuck out of this shit. If you ever seen Strangers, you know what I'm talking about. Like that's how, like the Red Mother definitely has that in this. So that's something if you're looking for again horror books, that is a great one, and that's only 3 arcs, I believe. I think that's a world because remember we were we had a little interaction with Jeremy Hahn on on Twitter a while back. They want to do more, I think, in that world, but right now there's only been 3 issues. So the Red Mother and Once and Future are my boom books to add. Let's move over to AWA. Obviously, friends of the show. We've had a lot of creators from AWA. Probably pound for pound, probably had the most creators from AWA on the show. What do you got for me?
So two excellent books. One,
Mm.
this first one I'll mention here, we had Axel Alonso on the show a month or two ago to talk about this book. So this, when you talk about gift guide, I mean this is the fucking, this thing was designed to come out for the holidays to be given as a gift because it is such a perfect compendium to an introduction into this world that AWA has created. So the Resistance universe, the origin, various writers, various artists. You know, J.
Sure.
Michael Straczynski has written a majority of these books. Mike Deodato Jr. has drawn a number of these books as well. But this is the Resistance universe is the main pillar that AWA was sort of founded on. You know, Axel's talked about, wanting to create a superhero universe that relates to modern day, and superheroes and villains that relate, to modern day. And ironically enough, it revolves around a virus, right?
Mhm.
And it came out the day the fucking world shut down because of coronavirus. But it's got the first volume of the Resistance. It's got the first issues of Moth's Resistance Volume 2, Resistance Reborn. It's got the first volume of Erratic in there. It's got what's one of the other titles in there? Oh shit, it'll come to me. But what this is, it's a compendium of all of the major titles that revolve around the Resistance universe. So it's a great introduction. So if you want to introduce, someone to indie comics, you want to introduce them into a new type of superhero, a new villain that tells all different types of stories, and it has various types of artists and great art to look at. This it's only $20, right? Which is the price of most graphic novels, and most graphic novels are only 6 issues long. This is 6, 12. This has got to be pushing close to 20 issues
Yeah,
in
there's a
this
lot.
compendium, right? Which is outstanding for that price point. Like, this is a great introduction, not only into, like I said, indie comics and a new, type of superhero universe, but to AWA as well. I think a lot of what AWA is you can find in these books. So I cannot recommend that enough.
Mm.
The other book I wanted to highlight here, again, friend of the show, John Lees, we had him on, over the summer, is The Crimson Cage. And so I picked this book versus any number of fucking AWA books I could have picked from, but I love Crimson Cage because it's two of my favorite things. It's horror, and it's wrestling. So Crimson Cage, written by John Lees, art by Alex Cormack, and this is a retelling of Macbeth through 1980s indie wrestling. And Cormac's art is bloody and vicious and
Yeah.
violent, and
Oh,
and Lees' storytelling, his sort of adaptation of Macbeth through these characters is tremendous. It's absolutely top notch. So if you know someone who loves horror books, who loves wrestling, it's absolutely perfect. I can't recommend it enough. Even if there's someone that's not into wrestling, right,
yep.
and just sort of has a vague, understanding of the story Macbeth, right, and you think they would like something like that, like, get this book. It is absolutely fantastic.
I honestly think like if you're if you're buying gifts for a wrestling fan, you're like, I don't know what to get them. They have again, like you're talking about adults, and it's like I don't know what to get them because they get their own stuff. If they don't read comics, get them this. They will be interested in it because I'm not a wrestling fan and I still really enjoyed this. And I have every reason to not because I don't give a fuck about wrestling. Really, really well written. And yes, Alex Cormack's artwork is fucking nuts.
Well, and what's great about it too is that John Lees is a wrestling fan, and if you
Mhm.
follow him on Twitter, because he's tweeting about it a lot. But he gets it because he's a fan of wrestling. He gets the roles of heels,
Yes.
and baby faces. He gets the lingo. He gets the dynamic of what makes great storytelling within the ring, not just great storytelling. Period. And then Cormac's art, like, he gets a lot of the moves down, right? There's the pacing to not just the storytelling, but the pacing to the art and the panels. It's spot on.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome stuff. Two great titles, and yeah, we talk about with AWA. There's a ton of stuff you can pick from. For me, though, there are two that jump out right away. Devil's Highway by again Benjamin Percy, and the artist on that series is Brent Schuvner, and Hit Me by Krista Faust, Priscilla Petrades, and then the colorist on that is Marco Lesko. And again, we don't touch on the colors a whole hell of a lot, but for Lesko, my God, just can I'll never forget that the first issue, like where we see the bruising, and it set the tone so well for the rest of the series.
Lesko's the colorist on Chariot as well. And you want to talk about a stark contrast between these two books. The coloring is, not just the storytelling, right, and the stories overall, but the coloring, right? The bright neon 1980s Miami Vice type coloring from Chariot, and then the dark, dreary, violent nature of Hit Me. I mean, Lesko is again, he's one of the best.
Now, I will say, if you're buying if you're buying this gift for children or anything like that, don't buy them Hit Me. Like I'm all for like, hey, like being again Uncle of the Year or something to that effect.
This is a mature book.
Yeah, so make sure they're like at least like 15 or something like that,
I
and
would
then
say make sure they're at least 18, Nicholas.
all right, fine. We'll play it conservatively, but if you want to be the cool uncle, make sure they're 15. Don't go beyond that though. Like
I
again,
don't want to be the uncle that they don't let their kids around anymore.
that's a fair that's a fair point. This is fucked up, and not because of horror stuff. It's just it goes into territory that people don't talk about often, and Krista Faust knows how to do it because of life experience. We had her on the show a while back. really interesting conversation. So I highly recommend that one. If maybe you're trying to get something for someone who's younger and you want to maybe get them something, Christopher's a badass female character still. Bad Mother is another one that I really like. Obviously, it was Redemption, I think, is the other one too, right? If I'm not mistaken, Joe, you talked about it on the show.
Yes, Redemption is excellent.
Yes, but I would lean, like, if you're picking one between one or the other, Bad Mother would be where I would lean a little bit more so. But and that is definitely, like, you're safer having a younger reader reading that. Still violent and everything, but the themes are a little bit less mature. We'll say, and then Devil's Highway too. Again, like, we talk about like indie stories, like this to me, I talked about this one on the show a while back, and to me, this is perfect. Actually, when we first had Axel Alonso on the show, he's like, you're trying to read more AWA stuff. Devil's Highway, Benjamin Percy. Like, this is one of the things that you absolutely have to check out. Year Zero was one that you talked about. You talked about zombie books that you read on the show.
And then he gave us his email address to have on the, like, Axel Alonso, I remember, like, booked our show that entire month.
Yes. Yeah. So I this one is great, and this is like set in the Midwest, and you talk about like truck, like people like now at least know how like the truck driving like industry, how like there's some shady shit that go on with that, and Benjamin Percy has a really interesting backstory with it. So there are 2 volumes to this. They could go into a third one. I don't know that they necessarily will. They ended it in a really good spot with the second one, but awesome stuff. Really great page turner, some badass characters in there too. Love Schuvner's art. So Devil's Highway and Hit Me are my picks. And I guess I'll throw in Bad Mother as well for AWA. Hit Me with an asterisk, I guess is how we'll label it. Let's go to Dark Horse.
Okay, so Dark Horse, I just have one book here from Dark Horse, because there's another book I could have put for Dark Horse, but I saved for Comixology. So West of Sundown, written by Aaron Campbell with art. Sorry, wrong. I can't fucking read. Dark.
Hey, you made it an hour 15, basically on one leg this whole time.
Manor Black, volumes 1 and 2, written by Cullen Bunn with art by Brian Hurt. We've had Cullen Bunn on the show. He's up him, Sean Lewis, and Scott Snyder. Those are the ones we've had on the most. We've had them on 3 times. Brag. But I love this. This is a good little sort of dark. I don't know if I necessarily call it horror. This is one I would call sort of horror adjacent, because it's got those horror vibes to it. But it's revolving around this mysterious family that's dabbling, in dark magic and sort of blood magic, if you will. And so it's revolving around this family in this town, and it's great storytelling. It's great art. Again, if you kind of like horror, but not like the really gruesome stuff, like this might be the book for you. There might be the book for someone that that kind of is dipping their toe into the horror genre a little bit, that likes the macabre, if you will. This is a good book for them.
Yeah, I mean, can't go wrong with Cullen Bunn. Especially, he's done a ton of great stuff over at Dark Horse, especially. For me, we talked about The Witcher earlier. Fading Memories is the one that we liked in particular. And again, Bartosz Sizebor, the artist on that one. Ahmad Mur was the artist for that one, and that was like we hadn't read a whole lot of. I do have the first Witcher omnibus, and I believe the second one is out as well. If you want to just pick those up, I think those would be great gifts for anybody. And I haven't read them, like those would be great gifts. But Fading Memories, one in particular that we really enjoyed. Sizemore really gets the character Geralt very well.
Yeah.
And these are just like one-off things. Just as long as you know who the Witcher is, maybe watch the series or play the video games, you're going to be able to appreciate these. I have an idea of what you're saving for Comixology, but specifically, I do want to mention We Have Demons by Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo. We had them on the show a while back. That's actually the only Friar Side Chat that we did stream, because it was such a big deal to have those 2 guys on at the same time. Having those 2, obviously a legendary Batman team doing creator-owned stuff. I don't think I need to say a whole hell of a lot more than that. There's the action, the art gets pretty nasty in the course of all this, but I still think that if it's a younger reader who you're trying to introduce to horror-ish type stuff, I do think this is an area where you could still do that. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like a for kids book, but like, if someone in that 13-year-old range who's like, I like Marvel stuff and I like comics, but I just can't find that thing that scratches my itch. This is a good way to help them kind of expand on that.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Awkward
No,
pause.
it's okay. We got Vault next.
Yeah. I'm dying here.
I know you are.
I've been dying for 40 minutes. So for Vault, again, I just have another single title for this. One that's still ongoing, but the first volume is out, and that's West of Sundown, written by Aaron Campbell and art by Tim Seeley. Again, this is a great sort of Western horror book, dealing with vampires and monsters, and it's great storytelling. Seeley's art is just, it's gritty. It gets vicious at times. Again, like I'm kind of hitting on a lot of the same types of genres, but I think that they're all a bit different.
Sure.
And so, again, this is the type of thing that makes indie books so great. And it's a unique story. Vampires, monsters, someone who likes that kind of stuff. Again, it's this is more horror than Men are Black is, but it's not so that you're like, oh gee, ooh,
Yeah.
that I gotta read this with the lights on kind of thing, because
Mm-hmm.
God knows I read enough of those. But this was a surprising book, because this is one that I picked up on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw at Newbury Comics. I grabbed the first issue, read it, and we talk about this all the time. A first issue's job is to get its hooks into you and make you want to buy the second issue. And that's what it does. It's great storytelling. It's unique. It's a little bit Frankenstein. It's a little bit vampires. You got some monsters, werewolves, all sorts of stuff. So, like, for the monster horror fan in your life, this is the book for them.
Nice. Yeah. You haven't talked about this one on the show, right?
I have not.
Yeah, okay. Nice. I'm interested in hearing more about that one at some point down the line. For me, from Vault, this is Vault we talk about quite a bit, but I don't feel like we always give them their fair shake. Ton of awesome stuff that comes out of there. And again, like similar to AWA, they don't put out a lot, but when they do, they usually hit. Barbaric, though, I think is one that's taking Vault to another level. Michael Morisi, Nathan Gooden, if you want to be the cool uncle, cool aunt, whatever, this is a really easy way to I guess vault your stock with your nieces or nephews, because this is really interesting. Really, like it's like got that, you got the mythology, the fantasy, the high fantasy stuff going on, but then there's a lot of sarcasm mixed in. And I feel like if you give this to a 12-year-old, they're gonna think like, again, it gets pretty violent. But if you give this to like your niece or nephew, they're gonna feel like they're reading something that maybe they shouldn't be reading, because like a little bit too adult for them. Which, and I don't think Barbaric is at all. As much as I do think you can hand this to a 25-year-old and they'd appreciate it as well. So yeah, Barbaric from Vault. Let's go through. We got a couple more left. IDW.
So again, a little change of pace here from the horror stuff now.
Yeah.
From IDW to Usagi Yojimbo. This is a book that's near and dear to my heart. I mean, there are countless volumes, countless omnibuses. The most recent, arc. I don't know if it's come to an end, because I believe Sakai is moving from IDW back to Dark Horse, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been a little bit of flux. But anyways, Usagi Yojimbo, written and drawn by Stan Sakai. This is a Japanese Ronin rabbit with a lot of anthropomorphic animals. But I love it because it's great storytelling. It's you get a lot of Japanese lore, in it, and mythology, and it's just, I don't know. This is a book that you can give your 12-year-old,
Yeah.
right, or your nephew, son, daughter, niece, whatever, or you could give to me now, and I'm a 40-year-old man reading
Mm-hmm.
this. I just love it. It's just unique, interesting storytelling, and it's like, I don't know. It's a good palate cleanser from when I'm reading the really dark and gritty stuff. And this is a world that you can get sucked into, and just you can fly through an omnibus and that's no easy thing. And you just kind of, because you get sucked in, and then you just,
Mm.
and all the characters are fun. This is a book, again, I'll always recommend to anybody.
You think about palate cleanse. I'm thinking about all the crazy shit that we read, and it's just like God. But for me, well, speaking of awesome stuff, I mean, no brainer. The Last Ronin. Any TMNT fan that hell, Goo can't even fucking read from Mac and Goo program, and he picked up The Last Ronin. That's all you need to hear. It's a great collector's piece, but it's also an awesome story. Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, the OGs on this story. Of course, Tom Waltz in there as well. Eastman also does some art. Ben Bishop, Isao, and Isaac Escorza are the artists. Amazing team, the originals, and they do an awesome job paying tribute to it's if you haven't read a TMNT comic in a long time, or you haven't watched the shows that are for kids now, you can really appreciate it. I don't know how much kids would necessarily appreciate it, but adults are absolutely going to love this thing. What is that? The Michelangelo Surfer?
Yeah, it's just, I got this. Goo tipped me off to this. Is
Nice.
the sewer surfer Mikey. I actually had there was a Black Friday deal, which I got that because Super 7s aren't necessarily cheap. But I had the original one when I was a kid. Very nostalgic for me.
Nice. Now, one thing, this doesn't happen often, but this is a book that I have not read myself. But one thing for younger readers, because look, we're talking, and now I'm talking like legit, like kids, like under 12 years old. Sonic the Hedgehog, specifically the run from 2018 to now. There's a lot of stuff out there for Sonic. This is written by Ian Flynn, and just looking at the first arc alone, he's got a mix of artists that he's dealing with. But I know personally, for my nephews, they love Sonic now with the Sonic movies and everything, and obviously that is very kid friendly. This very much fits the art style of what you've got from the Sonic shows over the years, which they also watch. So I think that is this series is a safe one to pick up if you're looking for younger readers, and where Sonic is like it was for us when we were a kid, Joe. Like Sonic has become a thing once again. So the 2018 run, I would look for that. Ian Flynn is at least the first arcs writer. That's a good thing for kids if you're looking for something on top of My Little Pony too. If you got younger female readers, well, obviously Violet reads that.
Anybody, we don't want to,
Yeah. Oh, sure.
yeah,
Yeah, well, obviously we don't. Yeah, Mac's a big My Little Pony fan.
right.
But let's finish things off with Comixology.
Okay, yeah, because I am out of fucking steam
Well,
here.
I mean, I
So,
could really sum this up really easy for you, Joe.
well, you sum it up, and then you go first on this one. You sum it up, and then I will add two titles that, if and when you get your Comixology Unlimited account, you should get.
Just get them a Comixology Unlimited account. It's like in I don't know how long you can get it for. Like if you can get them like a 3-month one and then let them decide afterwards. But figure something out. But you get it for them for a year because I feel like it's a pretty reasonable price if you're buying it for
$5 a month.
$5 a month. Okay. So get it for them for a half year and then let them decide. It is such an awesome tool for people who want to read ongoing stuff, people who want to catch up on things. Honestly, of all the gifts that we have here, that is dollar for dollar, pound for pound, the best thing that you can get anybody who's looking to get into comics, who already reads comics. Like there's just so much shit there. Don't think twice about it. Specifically, a title that I would highlight, Canary. Haven't talked about it on the show yet, from Scott Snyder and Dan Panosian. I will be talking about it when that first arc wraps up. Oh, I cannot believe I've made you wait to read this thing, Joe. It's so good.
I can't wait to read it. Yeah, I mean, I've been a Comixology subscriber now for a while, and the amount of books that you get that are free are great. Like a lot of the books that we talked about on here, if they have a Comixology account, they might be able to read for free, such as Hit Me, right?
Yep.
But if they want to buy, if there's not a local comic book shop near you, and the person reads comics digitally, there is a discount on the books that they get. But what's also great about it is the original titles. Now, this first book I'm going to mention real quick. This is a Comixology original. This is the All Nighter, written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Jason Liu. This is a fun take on superheroes, but the superheroes are vampires, and they can only go out and fight crime at night. and it's really fun. This is, again, it's something new, it's something different, but it's still in that superhero realm. So if the person likes offbeat superhero stuff, like, this is really good, and it's Zdarsky's writing it, so there's going to be great storytelling, great character development, but also some really good humor in there. And then the other title, this was when we had Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo on, the last time, it was to announce Scott-tober. This was over a year ago now.
Yeah.
And sort of the big to do with Scott Snyder signing this exclusive deal with Comixology, where he was writing all these titles, and they would come out digitally first and then eventually out in print for Dark Horse. Yeah. And so one of the first books that I read was The Night of the Ghoul, written by Scott Snyder with art by Francesco Francavilla, who's become one of my favorite artists.
Nice.
Because he does horror so well, and his use of everything is just brilliant. But this is a great, again, it's a horror book, but it's like a throwback horror book to some of those great, 50s, 60s style horror, the macabre, right? It's fantastic. This is also another one that Rich Keith, the Dork podcast,
I was just thinking that,
right, enjoys very much. So, such great storytelling, such great art. Like Comixology, it really, I mean, we've had some issues with Comixology, don't get me wrong, but like the titles that are available, the original content. I mean, I talked about what's the one by Jeff Lemire and Jock?
I have actually the signed
copy. Oh, son of a
Snow
bitch.
Angels.
Snow Angels. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent stuff. So you have some top tier writers creating original content for it. So it's worth the $5 a month. Your ROI, return on investment, people, excellent.
Through the roof. Yeah. And if you are new to the show and in this first time listening to it, make sure you recommend it to the comic book reader in your life that you're buying these gifts for. And also, you can listen to all the other books that we've talked, the other episodes that we've done where we've talked about specific titles, our mainline issues, which we've had a limited amount of those, given how long we've been doing this show. Those are all books that we recommend to people as gifts. Every time we're doing this, it is like we have our listeners in mind. These are things that you can pick up for the comic book readers in your life. Obviously, different tastes, but that's what we don't want to have both of us like the same exact things all the time. But anyways, that is it for this week, Joe. Never mind trying to stay sexy for next week. Just fucking stay alive for me, okay?
I'm gonna do my best.
And have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, have a tip-top tet. Happy New Year. We'll see you before the New Year, but saying it just in case I happen to die before then.
Please don't.